This video was made possible by EA Game Changers. Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again, and today I get to show you guys a video that I've been waiting to make for a long time now, because as you guys know, this channel has always been focused on infantry combat in Battlefield games, and especially on the weapons and how they work. And so, as you can imagine, I was pretty stoked that for about 5 or 6 hours today, I got to sit down and play Battlefield 5 at EA Play and try out every new gun I'm going to talk about in this video. Which means I've got a ton of new info to share with you guys, as well as a heap of gameplay which I'm going to be using in my upcoming videos in the next few days and weeks. Just before we do get started though, I should point out that this was only the pre-alpha version of the game, meaning there were only 8 weapons total for us to play with. And there was also no weapon customization or archetype customization available, which is going to have a huge impact on how these guns work in the final game. Also, bear in mind, we are still months away from launch, so there's a really good chance that some or all of these guns are going to get rebalanced. But with that being said, hopefully this video will give you a good taste of what weapons will be like in BF5, how they look, and most importantly, how they're gonna handle. So to kick off, the first gun we're going to take a look at in this video is the Irma Machine Pistol, which is an early war German submachine gun produced in the 1930s. And in this build of the game, it's available to the Assault class, which is exactly where you'd expect it to be, considering how things worked in BF1. Also, just like you'd expect, it's great for close quarters combat, especially when you're hip firing, and just like SMGs in BF1, it starts to suffer a little bit at long ranges. And I think in general, it's definitely a weapon that I found pretty easy to control, but I don't think by any stretch it's a beginner's weapon, and it could be tricky for newer players to master. Now, speaking of SMGs, the next weapon on the list is easily one of the most famous German weapons of the war, the iconic MP40. But unlike the EMP, even though it is an SMG, it's actually available to the medic class, which is a really good idea considering sometimes you want to play as a more aggressive frontline medic. Just like the EMP though, it's a great gun for close quarters, but I actually think it wasn't as strong overall, which makes sense considering medics aren't really meant to be the best at CQB. But with that being said, as you can see from the stats, it does have a slower rate of fire, and it was a bit easier to control, which did make it a bit more consistent at longer ranges. Now, next on the list is another iconic German weapon, the very first assault rifle ever developed, the STG-44, otherwise known as the Gewehr. And like I just said, it's an assault rifle, not an SMG, which means it's obviously tied to the assault class, and it's going to be a bit better at longer ranges. The thing about assault rifles though is that they're always going to be a bit of a trade-off, because as you can see, it's nowhere near as easy to handle as the last two guns. And I think it's weapons like this that DICE were talking about when they said that they were upping the skill level of the game, because this weapon is seriously deadly, but only in the right hands. Now onto the support class, and just like always, they have the LMGs again, and as far as World War II LMGs go, you can't get more well known than the British Bren Gun. And in this game, it's a beast in more than a few ways actually, considering it hits ridiculously hard, but it can be really difficult to control at times. It's also got a really easy to use bipod that you can throw down for a bit more long range stability, which is actually a lot more effective now considering spotting is gone. More about this in another video. But with that being said, as you can see from the stats, it is pretty woeful at hip fire as you'd expect from an LMG, and with the mag on top, it's also got a pretty terrible sight picture. Now, speaking of machine guns, well, this next one, the German MG34, is actually a medium machine gun, whereas in previous games it would have been considered an LMG. And in game, that means it's only available to the machine gunner archetype, which is, on another note, the only other archetype other than the main ones that we got to use in this build. It's belt fed, so you don't have to change mags, but unlike the Bren, the barrel will overheat if you're not careful, and you will also have a hard time using it if you're not using the bipod. But with that being said, as you can see, this gun fires at a ridiculous 670 RPM, which is way faster than any other gun in this build, and can really mow players down if you find yourself in a good position. Now, with all of the automatic weapons out of the way, the next gun on the list is actually probably my favourite weapon from the pre-alpha, the German Gewehr 43. And basically what this is a semi-automatic rifle, or SLR, for the medic class, just like we saw medics using in Battlefield 1. Except that in Battlefield 5, this thing is so powerful, especially now that health doesn't entirely regenerate, meaning you'll usually drop guys in 1 or 2 hits. But not just that, it's also got a decent cycle rate, it's reasonably easy to control, and in this build it had quite a nice 4x scope to dial in those medium to long range kills. Now, speaking of long-range kills, well, I'm sure a lot of you out there will be happy to see the next gun on this list, the standard German bolt-action rifle of the war, the Kar98K, which is basically like the World War II variant of what we know as the Gewehr 98 from Battlefield 1, and once again, it's found its way into the sniper rifle category. I shouldn't really need to explain too much about how this gun handles, but if you hear anything else about gunplay from the pre-alpha, probably what you're going to hear is that the sniper rifles were OP, and that's because in-game, this gun had a ridiculously fast bullet velocity, basically no bullet drop, and it could take out players in one shot way more than bolt actions can in BF1. But finally, the last gun on this list, but definitely not least, is the secondary weapon that was given to all classes in this build of the game, the German P38 pistol. And honestly, there's nothing really that special about this gun except for the fact that it was the standard German pistol of the war, and therefore it is very recognisable. It's easy enough to control, and it's more than capable of taking out enemies in a bad situation, but apart from that, it is a pretty stock standard sidearm. And so I think probably that means we're going to see this as one of the starter pistols in the base game, which will mean it's probably eventually going to get phased out of the meta as new and more exotic pistols come into the game. But anyway, guys, that just about wraps up this video, so let me know what you think about these new guns in the comment section below. In particular, let me know what your favourite is at the moment, and let me know what guns you'd like to see in Battlefield 5 at launch or in the future. As always though, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description below if you want to see any more of my videos. And also don't forget you can find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch with me. And as always, until next time, see you later and have a good one.